Hilary Larson, and I am the producer and host of A Conversation with Gangaji. A Conversation with Gangaji came from this little seed over 4 years ago that was about bringing Gangaji's message to you in a new and very unique way. 2 million downloads and 164 countries later, it has grown into something we could have never possibly imagined. It was the birth of Gangaji Radio. And now there's this new seed called Epiphany. Who knows what great things might happen to that once it gets off the ground. And we would love to have your help in making that happen. I'll tell you how you can do that once you've gotten a chance to hear this pilot episode. The inspiration behind Epiphany has to do with the power of our own realizations and how they connect us and how they potentially can change our lives. When I listen to the story that you're about to hear, what strikes me is the beauty and the contagious nature of our epiphanies, how they can go from a seed or a ripple and then turn into something quite extraordinary. We have lots of stories lined up that we would love to do for you, and every single one of them is an exquisite reflection of this peace that Gangaji speaks of. And one of them might just be the moment that changes your life. I don't want to keep you any longer. Let's listen to this first pilot episode of Epiphany. This is called Teachings from Grief. To work in the field of hospice requires a special skill set, along with a certain depth of compassion and courage. Providing comfort to individuals as they face their last days of life is a selfless act in a certain way. But what if someone who helps others on that most sacred journey is suddenly forced to face death themselves? What if the heartbreak of saying goodbye is their own? If you spend any time with Carol Downing, you'll notice she has a certain groundedness about her. You get the sense that you could sit down and tell her just about anything, and you'd be met with kindness and compassion. Maybe it was those qualities that led Carol to a career in nursing. Carol loved her work in hospice. She held the journey of so intimately tending to other people's vulnerabilities at the end of life as sacred and a privilege. In 2004, in the midst of a very full life, the course she was on took an unexpected turn. It happened when Carol met the love of her life.
I remember walking into this art gallery. It was like a art walk up in Alaska, where I'm originally from, and I walked in and I saw him standing across the room, and he had a light about him that was, I don't think it was just in his eyes. He just, like his whole being beamed. And I think in essence, we were together from that very moment. And I was afraid of it for a while, that he's too good to be true. But we really had a beautiful connection right from the very, very beginning.
Just a few months later, Carol and Michael were married. And in 2005, they had a baby boy. They named him Lucas. Michael had a career as an engineer, while Carol put her focus on their son. Carol was also in the midst of planning on opening a private practice. It was a good life, full of plans for the future. But there was one small thing. Michael had been feeling a little bit under the weather, some back pain, not quite feeling like himself. They weren't really worried about it, but his doctor ordered some tests, including a routine colonoscopy, just to check things out.
That day that I went to pick him up, we just thought everything was fine, and he called, and I had planned on just picking him up at the door, so I was in my yoga clothes and had just gotten out of the garden and picked up Lucas from kindergarten. So I had our young son with us, was 5 at the time, and he called and said I needed to come up, and I knew right then that something wasn't right.
On that fall day, in October 2010, Carol's husband, Michael, was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. Right away, the test results showed that surgery wasn't a possibility. When they woke up that morning, before he went to his appointment, as they planned other things like logistics for dropping him off, picking him up, what to have for dinner that night, A diagnosis of cancer was the last thing they ever expected to hear.
I remember just looking at Michael and, grabbing his hand, and we were both taking in this news. And I think the feeling inside of me is I want everything to stop. And they just kept going with, and I know that in their mind it was more information and here's how you follow up. But I just felt like the impact of that moment was so strong that I couldn't take anything else in. Even with all my background in nursing, I couldn't say anything. I was speechless.
The next 18 months included periods of time where life seemed almost normal, where Michael was still working, still going on his daily run. There were moments when he even hoped for a cure, despite his prognosis. There were the times when the chemotherapy worked, and then the time came when it didn't.
I can remember right where I was. Lucas was in an acting class, and I was sitting in a coffee shop waiting for him. I was doing some work and got the call, and I just heard the catch in his voice the minute I answered the phone that told us it had spread, not just to his lung, but to his liver, and that was the end of treatment.
The last month of Michael's life had moments of great physical pain, huge pain. Carol said that even with her medical training, there was nothing she could do. But there were also moments that had nothing to do with medical treatment or training. They were the moments when it was just the two of them, when everything was quiet, when there was only love present, and there was no training needed for that.
I feel like we would kind of surround ourselves in this kind of sacred cocoon, and we would read poetry from, the saints and mystics and just sit in silence together. And then when he was dying, and just sitting next to his bed and aware that it could be a week or a moment in that he would die, I felt like I just wanted to be connected to that place that I know I source from, that I know I am, that he is. It felt like a place of deeper connection than even talking, to just somehow resonate in that, the sacredness. And I think in a way, not even in a way, I know I experienced more stillness and peace and clarity about the nature of being simply by sitting next to him as he died.
When you look at the months since that time, what have you learned about grief? Because there's those beautiful moments when we're so connected, and then there's the moments where you go to the grocery store for the first time and you're not with your partner, and there's those real life moments.
I mean, grief taught me, I think, above anything, it taught me to feel in a way that I don't know I ever was willing to feel before. And what I would see is that my feelings, to push them away, everything became so overwhelming that I would almost not be able to function. Whereas if I let myself feel, if I felt how alone, how angry, how just the void of what was, I got to a different place. Like, I didn't stay in the feeling, but if I allowed myself to really feel that first moment at the grocery store, or the moments where I would be in bed at night alone and not being able to feel any connection to him at all, and to just let myself feel that on the other side of that was relief. There was a stillness that would come after I think I would just let myself feel the humanity of it all. And then it wasn't any different, right? You know, that there were hundreds, thousands of people all around the globe losing partners and children. And it somehow connected me to something much deeper than myself.
I was thinking that there's this thing that I've heard Gangaji say many times before, that life is the Satguru.
Oh. Yeah.
And in that, I'm so touched by what Michael taught you in life when he was with you in life, and what he's taught you now that his form isn't here. Like, who could ever plan that?
Yeah, I don't think I ever would have imagined the impact of kind of but how I am since his death. I mean, I think there's an awareness of loving that I trust. Even though the pathway to that was losing the person I loved the most in the world, that it gave me a place, oddly enough, to trust more than I'd ever trusted before. In peace and more loving. I think that's the way I describe it, is there's a place of loving beyond all that surrender that I can't deny. I don't doubt it anymore.
I'm Hillary Larson. This is Epiphany on Gangaji Radio. Your stories of realization and inspiration. If you were moved by Carol's story, if you'd like to join us in sharing more of these incredible life journeys with the world, here's how you can help. There's a donate button just for Gangaji Radio right there on the Gangaji website. We would be so grateful for any contribution that feels right for you. It allows us to get Epiphany underway, and also you'll be supporting the continuation of A Conversation with Gangaji. The mission of Gangaji Radio is to support Gangaji's message of peace and to spread that message far and wide.